Hello, welcome to episode 7, Dealing with Crosses. I'm Eric Eisenhut, host of your GK Icon Academy's Coaches Panel Discussions. With us today, we have Coach Jesse Goleman. Jesse is a local college goalkeeper training consultant in the Pittsburgh area. He's also the owner of Goleline, which is a strength and performance center specifically for goalkeepers. We have Bill Burtner, who is a DOC of a local club, and within those responsibilities, he's the director of coaching. Bill is also on our ODP goalkeeper coaching staff here in PA West. We also have Steve Rerick. Steve is the assistant and goalkeeper coach for the men's soccer team at Slippery Rock University, and is also a DOC of goalkeeping at a local club. Welcome, fellas. How are you?
Great.
Doing well.
Happy to be here, Eric.
Awesome. Let's get right at it. Coach Bill, I'm going to start with you. Can you talk to me about dealing with crosses? What are you looking for in your goalkeepers? What's your approach to it? What do you want to see out of your GKs when dealing with crosses?
Well, first and foremost, if we can shut it down before it starts by not allowing that cross, that's a lot of headaches. So, when the ball's out on that flank, we should always be communicating to probably our outside back, no cross. If we can shut that down early and not have to deal with the ball coming in our box, it's all the better. If they are able to get a cross in, then the communication of it, either keeper or away, becomes essential. As I tell my goalkeepers, saying nothing is not an option. When a cross comes in, you need to be giving communication and direction to your back line and your teammates.
Awesome. Coach Jesse.
Yeah, for me, as when we're dealing with crosses, my big thing is what I tell goalkeepers all the time is we have to constantly be scanning the field, right, left, right. So for me, let's say that ball gets played down one of the wings and their attacker is going to get it. As that ball is being played, as we're backpedaling into position, are we looking out in front of us to see, okay, they might have a guy trailing and get, hey, Jimmy, go take the runner at the top of the box, right? Because in my opinion, I think, that ball is coming over on the wing. And if it's a 1v1 situation, then I think we know, well, he's either going to try to beat him one-on-one or cross it early. So we need to kind of anticipate that cross first and then react to a 1v1 situation. Maybe he does get beat. And then, at least that way our guys are marked up. So, if our man does get beat one-on-one, then at least that way, we're still marked up and we're still in a relatively good position. But, I think the first thing we need to do as that ball is being played out wide is, are we marked up in the middle? Are our backs in the right spot? Just constantly be scanning the field to kind of avoid any quick header goals.
Coach Steve.
Yeah, so Jesse, again, did a fantastic job with that.
Thanks, man.
Watching myself, I'm a very big component of making sure you're scanning the field, just like Jesse alluded to, is making sure that not only are you aware of where the ball is at and conscious of, is he going to be crossing in, but also making sure you have everyone covered back post, making sure that everyone's marked up, knowing where the runners are going to be at. So, again, well said.
Yeah. To prevent that cross is great defensive work, right? But when that cross is taken, if you can have everything aligned and be proactive in your marking, I think is crucial. And I think you guys all made reference to that. But I feel a lot of kids get so focused and honing in on the ball and the situation happening out wide. Rarely are they looking back post. And not only are they rarely looking back post, rarely are they then commenting on it or communicating what's happening back door, despite the ball being on the side. So my advice to goalkeepers is always check that shoulder. And even once you take that snapshot and you understand what's back there and you know what you need to say, you don't have to be looking this way to speak this way. I can be looking this way, but I can still be speaking over here. And I just tell people cup their mouth, but still back door, goal side, and be quick, be specific, and use names. Bill, back door, goal side, number 12. And I'm still focused here on the ball, but I'm speaking here. And if that ball is served in back door and you can't get to it, that away call occurs, you got to rely on your defense. So well done there talking to that.
Yeah, and can I just touch something else too?
Yeah, go right ahead.
Yeah, so just like what you're saying, I think all we really need is a quick 1 second glance, and then like you've been saying, watch the ball, but you should know, okay, Well, you know who your center backs are, so your center backs are probably in the middle of the field. So all you need to really do is see, okay, they're my runners, and then that way, you know, you're looking at the ball, you're focused on the ball, but at least this way, again, like you're saying, you know, you should be able with a quick look just tell who's there, where they need to be.
Yeah, and even going off of that point is, you know, a lot of young keepers specifically, they go, and if the ball's out on this side, they turn their entire body that way, so that way, you know, they can't see what's behind them. It's really important on that body position, so that way you're, yeah, you can slightly be angled a little bit towards where the ball's at, but you want to have that open body position so that way you can go and do that quick scan and come right back, so that you don't have to go and turn your entire body going each way.
Dealing with 3 different types of crosses: balls that are placed on the ground, balls that are like hit pinged in there and nice and, you know, or a lofted ball. Let's talk about those 3 approaches because they are different, all 3 of them. Coach Bill, let's start with you. Let's talk about if you could talk to all 3 of those and what you advise your goalkeepers how to approach that cross. Again, when dealing with a lofted cross, when dealing with something that's pinged in there about 5 feet high, as well as when it's on the floor.
Yeah, dealing with crosses is always evolving in terms of the situation. I always make sure with positioning of my goalkeepers, you want to probably be about middle goal, 2 to 3 steps off that line. Coach Steve brought up the good point of the body position, making sure we're opened up a bit so we can see the field. That's so true for our defenders too, and the communication with our goalkeepers, being able to, you know, reference our back line, make sure our body position is good. When those crosses come in, first service on the ground, if we can go and meet it out in front post and get it before it gets in there, fantastic. It's a tough skill for a lot of our younger goalkeepers. They don't have the, I don't want to say bravery, but there is an element of that. But to be able to have the confidence to go out there and meet that ball on the ground amongst the sea of feet and collect it early is very important. With that ball pinged in, that provides a different set of challenges. A pinged in ball at that pace is harder to collect. So that would bring in the situation of, do we decide to box it or punch it out as opposed to try to collect it and catch it? My preference is if we can catch it, that's always going to be our first choice. But say the weather conditions, a little bit of rain, we have a slick ball, we have the traffic, and that ball's pinged in there, it's probably not a bad idea then to change our technique to punching the ball out rather than trying to catch. And then for the final scenario, that ball that's lofted in back post, the communication aspect is very important to make sure early on that we are taking that snapshot, like Eric said, to have that picture, to make sure that we're communicating to our defenders to have that marked up, and then just to be able to track the ball in the air. In those scenarios, the coaching point I always make on those back corner balls is first step, no step, which is so important. A lot of the times that ball that's lofted in back post, goalkeeper's first movement is to come forward. It's always easier to come forward than it is to go back. It's definitely easier than going forward and then having to recover back. So give yourself a second as a goalkeeper to judge the ball in the air, and then decide what we want to do, and always make sure we're giving the commands, you know, keeper or away, to deal with those crosses.
Coach Steve, please elaborate.
Yeah, so the crosses in general, they provide a whole different set of challenges, just like Bill just said. You know, as they go and as they're driving down that line, it allows you to go more towards the center of your goal. But once they get to the end line, you know, if they start to cut in, you know, that provides, you know, that's where we come into 3-goal situations. And the closer they get to, the more you have to kind of cheat to cover that near post. But what I mean by 3-goal situations is you have the cut back right to, like, say the front post of that runner that's coming in, where you really have to drive your head in your hands. You have to be brave. You have to go and try and get in front of that ball. Most of the time it's going to be a 50-50, and you're going to have to meet it on that striker's foot. So is it the most fun thing in the world? No. Is it the most fun thing to train? Absolutely not. But, you know, it's a part of what we have to do as keepers and we have to be able to be willing to put our body on the line. That's what we signed up for. The second service is, that ball up top, kind of, some people refer to it as Bangu, but that ball up to the top of the box, kind of up in the hole, by the PK area, where that you want to go and really focus on driving your head and your hands, getting that proper body position to open up and shuffle across, maybe one step forward, but make sure you're set before they're striking that. And that last one is that chipped ball back post, where you really just want to go and, Casillas, growing up, he made a dozen of these saves where he'd go and ball's going in back post, and he really drives his head and his hands, uses that footwork to drive across back post, and he makes that save back post, not necessarily following that goal arc, but taking that direct path to make sure that he's getting there right in front of that ball.
Nice. Coach Jesse, I want to get back to those three types of services. Give me your comments on the ball on the ground, the driven ball, the clip, as well as the high arcing service.
Yeah, I'll touch on the high arcing one first, and like what Bill said is, first step, no step. Something that I was taught my freshman year of college was the saying for crosses was start late but arrive early. Whenever I try to explain it to the kids, they're like, "What are you talking about?" And then you explain it, but essentially it's the same thing. You start late so that you see that ball get played over the top. You're gonna relax for that half a second, decide where that ball is, and that's your judge. And then boom, as we're arriving, we should be able to arrive right on time to where we're either catching it at our highest point or coming with a punch. But again, we always want to start late, give it that second. But yeah, and again too, I think with that driven ball, when it's more on a line, it's a little bit harder, and that allows for a quick flick header. So again, I think we have to judge where start late still and judge where that path of the ball is gonna be. And most of the time for a driven ball, if it's kind of tailing into your goal, I think we can still kind of attack the ball. But for something that's more of a line drive, for me, I would probably suggest to try to stay home a little bit, stay a little bit off my line, and just play for the reaction, because those ones are hard because, they might be rising and guys are coming in front of you trying to get a flick. And, I think those are going to be the hardest ones to deal with. But I still think for me, if you're getting inside your 6 on a driven ball or on a line drive, I would stay home and try to trust your reactions to make a save kind of right off your goal line. And lastly, the low crosses, it depends where the ball is. We're always making sure that our guys are marked and we're following our runners. And as they get closer to our goal, going back to what Steve said, the 3-goal situation, then we start to turn our body more towards the attacker, dribbling down the end line, and then kind of facing it in a 1v1 situation. But for me, I think the biggest thing will always be our communication with our backs and making sure runners are checked and we're not ball watching and everybody's always marked up. So communication first, start late, arrive earlier. I think going to be or at least my biggest points.
Yeah, I my thoughts on this is similar, but it's slightly different in a couple of ways. One, bravery piece you've all mentioned, I think is so important, especially for younger goalkeeper coming off the line, trying to take in a ball when people are running right at them. That bravery component is really, really important. And I think training all 3 service types are very important. I think when people talk about dealing with crosses, a lot of goalkeeper coaches just deal with the ball that's coming in and out of the air. They're coming and taking it down, and that's it. When does that ball really play? At what age? That ball's not happening up until 12, 13, 14 years old. So, but you see these 8, 9, 10, 11-year-olds. So I'm not saying it's bad to practice that technique, but the reality of a game situation is those balls are going to be coming through on the floor more often than they are going to be playing a high lofted ball into the air. That's just a reality of that age group. So can we practice all 3 of those service types at a younger age? And I think that's one challenge I have out there. One comment. The other is, I love you all said it too, the first step, no step, and taking in the flight of the ball. And then your footwork after taking in that flight of the ball is crucial. How are you getting there? Sometimes you have to go back or a back circular motion to go forward to go through the flight of the ball. Because when you find that flight, your advantage is up here, right? Everyone's coming at it here, but you're up here. So if you can get to that flight and take the ball in here, you're not going to have any contact, or you shouldn't have people around you. You're taking that ball in down here. Now you're in the zone of where forwards can be heading the ball, and you're probably going to have to deal with and prep yourself for some contact. So the higher and more in front of the ball you can get it as you're going through that service line is, to me, or the flight of that ball is crucial. And the last piece I'm going to talk about before we move on is the keeper versus away call. We always practice keeper, and everyone's saying keeper. But in reality, I believe the kids younger age are saying the words away more than that. They should be saying the word away more than keeper, just based on balls going through their box and they're not coming out for it. So that communication, not only does it need to be a keeper call, I think the away call needs to be practiced just as much, if not more than the keeper call at the younger ages. And that's not saying we're giving them an excuse to stay back, but they need to effectively communicate with their team what you're doing, because they're watching the ball, they're watching their mark, they're not paying attention to you, right? So if you have an away call, now they know they have to get to that ball first. And I think the earlier you can say that, obviously, the better. So younger goalkeepers, please, work on that communication, both keeper and away, at an earlier age. Cool. Let's get into boxing versus boxing or punching versus catching. Coach Bill, you mentioned some variables in that equation. You mentioned weather. You mentioned sun, or the direction of where the sun's coming from. What other variables are there? And what do you like to see? I know everyone's comfortable with the catch, but at the same time, when boxing or punching, what are you looking for out of that box and punch? And what do you tell your goalkeepers? How do you tell your goalkeepers to perform that? Coach Jesse, can I start with you, please?
Yeah, absolutely. I think Bill mentioned it earlier, just we want to catch everything. Obviously, that's ideal, but that's not always the case. So, when you're punching it, I'm a big two-fist, trying to get 2 fists to the ball. If you can't, then high and wide is kind of just where I'm always trying to punch it, outside the 18. Obviously it's going to be ideal, is just trying to go up above everybody, get 2 fists to the ball, coming straight through it, kind of straight in the air, just so at least we're getting the ball high. Obviously we want to get it out of the 18, but it's better than kind of just coming straight line drive where, we might miss or might hit off like our pinky or something and just bounce straight down. So if we are punching it, go high and wide, or at least high and far out the 18, get your guys up after that to bring that high line back. But if we can catch it. And I always, especially in training too, I always try to tell my goalkeepers to think catch, because I think in a game subconsciously they'll kind of feel that danger and make that, and I trust them to make that right decision. But at least in training, if I can get them to think catch, then that might translate to a game to where we can start feeling more confident in holding more balls.
Coach Bill, if I'm going after a ball and I can two-hand fist it, why don't I catch it?
Well, couple reasons. One, we already mentioned, would be potentially weather. A wet ball is much harder to collect than a dry ball. Being able to recognize with the older groups if there's a swerve on the ball, that's going to make the catch a little more challenging too, if that ball is spinning as it's coming into us. And a lot of times what I see is it's a last minute change in decision based on the traffic within your area. If you get to that ball and you have a striker who's up in the air and competing for that ball, the chances of us catching and holding it at that point might be a little bit lower than if we just go ahead and switch to that boxing technique and get it out of our 18.
Yeah, and I think one thing too, I want to emphasize regarding that two-handed box, that ball should be going literally right back where it came from. And right. I think some people, I've seen them at the younger age when they're first starting to learn to box, their ball's coming in here and they're trying to do this and keep it going through. And I think they need to take that coaching moment and teach the kids the footwork to align themselves with that line of the ball and then go back right through that line of where it's coming from and put it right back in there. And not a lot of power is needed, but what you were saying, Coach Bill, about the height of the ball, I tell my goalies, err on the side of caution, meaning that ball needs to go higher than it does lower. Because if it's lower in a line drive setting, you're out of your 6, you're in your 18 somewhere, you're hitting a two-handed volley or two-handed box. That ball gets right down to someone's chest. They bring it down. That's a quick shot, and you're out of position. If you err on the side of caution and the exact opposite, it goes too high, like straight up, guess what you can do? You can go catch it. So go up and get it. Aaron, don't. But yeah, I think a lot of people sometimes when they get over anxious, they'll box where their pinkies are. You'll see that top spin and that ball just kind of go down. I always tell them, middle 3 fingers right through that ball, and you don't need a lot of power. You just have to hit it properly. Coach Steve, talk to me about a one-handed box, when you use it versus a catch or a two-handed box. And are you looking for power? What's your take on the one-handed box?
Yeah, so typically whenever I have my keepers do a one-handed box, it's not trying to go straight through the ball and get it right back out. Typically, if I have them do a one-handed box, depending on which keeper, it's mainly when that ball is coming up and over top of you where you can't claim it, you can't punch it and come straight through that ball line. But you kind of just want to help that ball on, and you want to have that top hand go up and over to get some sort of contact on it, so that way it throws the flight path of the ball off. So that way, the attackers can't get straight on the end of it. I'm not a big fan of, if people are coming out and they're just trying to, like Mike Tyson the ball and try and punch it out as hard as they can. Because, that's when you run into the miss hits, the miss clearances, and you don't get a clean contact on it. Really the only time that I'm okay with a one-handed box is if there's going to be a ton of contact and you can't get both hands up and it's really high above everyone and you just want to get something on it and try and go and just, like I said earlier, just kind of redirect the flight path of that ball, throw off the timing of the guy's runs, and just get something on it. But always you want to go, and like you alluded to a couple times, is you want to have that arcing run to get behind that flight path, and you want to have that two hands to go up and through. And, great point on having it go higher than wider. The higher you can get it, the better, So, well said.
Eric, if I can touch on Steve's
Yeah, go right
point,
ahead.
I think that's an important thing too. If we are going one hand, any slight touch on the ball to kind of throw off that flight path can throw off an attacker. And I think it's the same. And I tell a lot of goalkeepers too, when they're taking a low cross, as that cross comes across the body, like any slight touch can impact the striker who's running in, trying to tap in the goal, just enough to where like maybe the ball gets behind them a little bit and they don't get a clean hit. And it's going to be the same on a cross. If you can get one hand to kind of affect that flight path just enough to where now that striker has to react a little bit more, or he's not expecting you to touch it, that'll throw off his header and, at least kind of live to see another day. So I think that's important too. Just getting any type of touch on it can affect the flight path. Yeah,
I'm going to elaborate that in a moment. But at first, Coach Bill, talk to me about the bravery needed to go with that one-handed box, and typically which way are you moving when you're doing that? What's the bravery level, and what are the chances of contact with that one-handed box with an opponent?
Well, the fact that you're in a scenario where you're going to a one-handed box is going to tell us we're going to be around a lot of traffic. To then switch from two hands to one hand is going to expose our ribs and midsection potentially even more. So you got to be ready to take the shot. From my playing experience, that is usually whenever I've been injured is trying to go up for those one-handed box, just because your ribs are exposed. You have oncoming strikers coming in. So to try to teach it, to make sure that you're protecting yourself as much as possible with bringing up the outside knee, or just bringing up any knee in that point, to try to create some separation from the oncoming strikers is important.
Yeah, one thing I talk to my goalkeepers about all the time is if that serve's coming here and you're on your near post and that ball's going over, but you're going to get to it, you turn those hips and you start running through with watching the flight of the ball. As you're going for that box, as Steve was mentioning, the top hand, and you're just helping it along, right? All you're trying to do is get the ball over that group of people that are hanging out back door. So you don't need a lot of power, but you do need enough of a bump to keep it over that group. Now, that group's coming at you. You're going at them. I always tell them, if you're going here, that box, this is the boxing hand, this hand's here. And I always tell my goal, and I'm not saying you're going out boxing people, right? But you're protecting yourself. And this arm alone has saved me on so many occasions. And two things. One, you're now going after that ball with a high arm and a fist, and your whole body's going that direction, and you scream and keeper as loud as you can. Guess what the opposition's going to do? They're going to think twice. And even if you get a small little piece of that ball, and even if you have to open the hand up to parry it over that group, and you just get that little fingertip on it, That's the difference between a forward having that ball coming down perfectly on their forehead and putting it in the goal with a header, or instead of hitting them here in the head, that little nip, now the ball's hitting them here, and that ball is going out of bounds or over the goal. So I love Jesse's point about any contact that you can make on that ball, and that type of serve back door with the one-handed box is absolutely a necessity. All right, cool. No, I like the way you guys talked to that. What was my last situation I wanted to talk to you guys about? Defenders' roles during crosses. I know from a communication standpoint, we talked about marking up the back door, and obviously when that ball's cut back into the top of the box, we want our defenders to be goal side or ready for that one-time clearance. But let's say you're going for the ball and you yell keeper. What do you tell your defenders, or what do you want your defenders to do in the immediate area or in the surrounding area inside the 18 that you wouldn't hear a communication from your goalkeeper for them to do, but they just know they have to do this? So it's like an if-then statement. If my goalkeeper goes for the ball, then my defenders have to. Bill, fill that in, please.
Somebody has to drop back in behind you to cover the goal. We're coming off of our line. It can be, usually it's the center back. It could be an outside back or whoever is in position. But when we're coming off our line to collect that cross, that should be an automatic for the defenders within that area to drop in behind us and provide some coverage in the goal.
Well said. Coach Jesse, anything else you'd add to the defender's role during that situation?
Yeah, I mean, I think they need to follow the play all the way through. A lot of defenders, I think, will hear you say keeper and then stop, be like, oh, Jesse's got it. And that's not always the case. Especially if a couple attackers are coming up against you, like Bill said, one needs to drop in, one needs to, clear the attacker out of the way in case you do drop it. They're right next to you ready to play. But, they just can't be ball watching. That's the biggest thing. It's like, just because you say keeper, that play's not over. They need to essentially act like you're going to drop it. And I think if they do that, then we're all in good. Then, at least we're in better hands than them just ball watching.
Steve, what do you tell a young coach? How do you instruct their back line when keepers are coming out? What do you tell them?
Yeah, much to the point that Jesse and Bill just said is you want to always make sure that your team stays switched on. When your keeper comes out, they're very capable of error, just like everybody else on the field. So you want to have, not have that keeper be the last line of defense. Much to the point that Jesse just said, you want to have people follow that play all the way through. So maybe in that immediate area, separate, try and get that extra step right in front of that attacker. So that way it's the goalie, the defender, then the attacker. And you always want to be that ball side just in case he does drop it. That defender can go and sweep that ball right out. The surrounding guys, if they don't have a mark, that's one point that I really want to stress. If they don't have a mark, then that's when they can go and come in behind you. If they do have someone, you don't want to just leave someone sitting wide open in the 18 just in case there is a missed catch, missed clearance, something like that, where it'll fall straight to them. And then, they get the ball and score, and then the goalie's looking around, it's like, oh, why'd you leave him? So if you don't have a mark, you want to go and then fill in behind. But you always want to make sure that you're being proactive. You're instructing your defenders, if the goalie is coming out, try and go and give that goalie a little bit of extra space, try to, shield the attacker away from the goalie to limit the contact. But everyone else just really stay switched on and anticipate that error, just like Jesse said.
Yeah, I think the back, I tell younger kids all the time, like, you want to be a goal scorer? Just hang out back post. Just hang out back there. And I think when that service is going, I think I get very upset when the back door is wide open, because I feel that's a goalkeeper's responsibility. I know that a marking back should be there. I get that. But at the same time, we should be looking there we should always be checking back post. And if that's open or no one's marking that, that's on us. We need to verbally communicate and be loud, be specific. That's when a name comes into play. Bill, back door, goal side, number 12. Bill, I'm going to keep picking on you here. But that needs to take place, and if that doesn't, that's an easy one-touch goal. And at the younger levels, happens all the time. And it happens all the time at the upper levels too. People looking to get that ball out, where is if a goalkeeper's saying away, we got to trust our defenders. And we also have to trust our footwork if we're saying away to get across our goal and be ready for that shot and get ourselves set before the shot. Get our hands ready. Is it a close shot where our hands can be a little wider. Our hands is an outside 18 where we can try and catch. But I think the footwork when it comes to dealing with crosses, whether we're going for the ball or not, or we're preparing for a shot, is crucial. Let's summarize, guys. Appreciate it. We have some time, so take a minute or two to give me last words if you can. Coach Jesse, I'm going to start with you, please.
Yeah, just going back to a lot of communication and anticipating, I think the best players, you hear it, especially at professional levels, the best players, the game just slows down for them. I'm a big LeBron fan, so I'll use LeBron. LeBron, if you ever seen behind the scenes, he knows everything that the offense is going to do. Just going back to a couple of his Warriors finals, he's calling out plays, Steph's going to do this, this, and this. He sees the game. And as a goalkeeper, I think that's very important because we're behind everybody. We should be able to see the game, know what is going on, and always think a couple steps ahead. What if, our center back steps to the ball, gets beat? How are we going to have our backs filling behind? And, I think if we're constantly thinking 1 or 2 steps ahead of playing out, 3-4 different scenarios as the attacking team is coming down, I think we'll start to see the game slow down, and we'll be better players for that because now we can anticipate any type of scenario and we're ready for it. We're proactive, we're not reactive. And that's, I think, a good quality of a goalkeeper.
I love that. And I know it may fall into our communication piece a little bit and overlap a little bit, but in how we deal with crosses, if being proactive and eliminating it before it happens, Coach Bill mentioned this earlier too, is crucial. And I think sometimes the best save is the one not made, because we as a team defended to the point where we're eliminating that opportunity before it takes place. And a lot of it deals with crossing. Crosses come in, and if we're prepared and we're marked up, we're okay. But that needs to take place. I think so. Communication, dealing with crosses, I think are 2 very important topics that are overlapped considerably. Coach Steve, may I continue with you, please?
Yeah, so you guys actually took the 2 big points that I wanted to touch on was, Jesse being proactive instead of reactive. In my opinion, the best game a goalie can have is when he doesn't have to make a save, because he can go and sit behind that back line. And if he's organizing his defenders and calling out runs and making sure that services aren't coming in, then, it's an easy day for you, where you don't have to make that save. But being proactive and not needing to make that save and making sure that people are in the right spot, you're positionally in the right spot, it can make all the difference. So, again, Eric, Jesse, well said.
Coach Bill, final thoughts?
Yeah, I want to bring up a point, and it has to deal with field position of our goalkeepers. For some reason, I've been seeing this the last couple of years, and not even so much with our youth players, but even up as far as high school, that to be able to recognize where you should be in the goal based on where the ball is. I see a lot of goalkeepers in a crossing scenario on their front post. And I don't know why that is. I don't know if it's from the increased play in futsal or what, but as coaches, we have to make sure that we're correcting that, in the sense that Steve brought up earlier. There's a transition to where a play becomes a crossing scenario and then a 3-goal scenario where we do have to come out and guard that front post. If that player with the ball breaks down the outside defender and is dribbling towards the goal, then it shifts from a crossing scenario where we should be more in the middle of our goal, opened up to the field, to we better get across and be able to protect that first goal in a 3-goal scenario. So that's just something I've noticed here recently with my teams the last year, is to make sure that our goalkeepers are not playing the front post whenever it's a crossing scenario, and make sure they're in proper position.
Well done. My final words on this is I'm going to gear this mostly towards goalkeepers, but I'm going to throw in a couple of goalkeeper coaching points too to some coaches out there. First of all, understand all 3 different flights of the ball: on the floor, a ping ball in, as well as a loop ball. Bill, you and I have trained many occasions with the younger goalies, more of a whipping in service, 4 or 5 feet off the ground, back door, and how do they handle that compared to a lofted ball, just based on how they play the game at that age. And I think if you can develop your training so it fits the actual mold of the game being played for that age goalkeeper, that quality of a goalkeeper, you're going to get a better result. And I'd like to continue with that. The communication in training has to happen too. Keeper versus away. And I always tell my goalies, you know, I want you making mistakes and finding out what your range is in training. Go for those balls you might not normally get to, because you know what? You might be surprised. You might surprise yourself and expand your range. So I've said it before, get comfortable being uncomfortable and getting out of your comfort zone. Training's the place to do it. And if that ball is away, they need to train the word away as well. Like, get your goalkeepers in any service, they're saying something. Saying nothing is the absolute worst thing you can do. Coach Bill mentioned that earlier. You're either saying away or keeper, and it's early and it's loud. If you go for it, you are going hard. There is going to be some contact on occasion. It's part of the game. Protecting yourself, whether it's a backdoor with the elbow up, the arm up, whether it's a knee being driven up to protect yourself and not leaving those ribs exposed. You need to protect yourself, but the higher you can catch that ball from the flight of the ball, the less contact you're going to have. The last one I had was one other piece. Oh, footwork. Train the footwork in regards to getting across the goal, because sometimes you do have to face the ball, take a couple steps back, and then come straight at it if that ball is being dumped on your head. Don't just stand there, go up, come down with it. You're going to set yourself up for a nice collision there. So footwork is key. Bravery is key. Communication is key. And understanding the 3 types of different services that are coming in is as well very important. I love the 3-goal scenario we talked about. I think we're going to do another episode. I know we're going to do another episode on the 3-goal scenario, so we'll expand more on that. Keep your eyes open. But yeah, that's all I have, guys. Hey, thank you for your time today, fellas. Appreciate it. And I will see all you at the next episode. Thanks again, everybody.
Thanks, guys.
Yes, sir.